You're listening to the Teak Nation podcast, where we strive to educate, inspire, and entertain you with tips and lessons from frauders and friends of TKE.
Hello, Teak Nation podcast listeners. My name is Alex Swinson. It is Tuesday, July 6th. Hope you all had a fantastic 4th of July weekend. Enjoyed some cookouts, maybe some pool time. I know I did. Got nice and bronze. We are going to jump right into our interview for this week. We have Andrew Hughes, who is back with us, fresh off of Mount Everest. We talked to Andrew back in April when he was actually at base camp on Mount Everest, and was a very exciting, enlightening conversation at that time. Brought him back to talk about his journey, talk about what he learned, talk about what it looked like to sit at the very top of the world, frankly. And I think you're really going to enjoy what he had to say, and all of the emotions he felt, and just everything to go along with achieving something that very few human beings have the opportunity to achieve. One of, frankly, my favorite interviews we have done yet to date. So with that, we will get into Andrew Hughes, member from the Chi chapter at the University of Washington, and recent climber of Mount Everest. For those who have not checked out the first episode we did with Andrew 2-3 months ago, I'd encourage you to do so. But Andrew, it is good to see you in one piece, looking a little more pleasant and happier than the last time we talked to you, I would say. How you mentioned before we started recording, your body's finally recovered. And I know you, on May 23rd is when you reached the summit. How long does it actually take your body to bounce back from something like that?
Yeah, I mean, the mountain takes its pound of flesh, and in my case, it took about 23 pounds of it off me between the time that I started the expedition and kind of the trek in early April. So we got off the mountain on the 25th, but even when you get off the mountain, you're still at 17,500 feet. And the way it worked for us is I dropped about 15 pounds on that summit push alone. So over about 12 days, I dropped 15 pounds from base camp to the summit and back again. Just because you're going at such a high rate of kind of endurance at that altitude. And so it just kind of, your body can't get enough food into it. You can't feed yourself enough food. And so it starts cannibalizing all your muscles, which is just the only way you can get the energy to survive and get you to the summit and back down again. But I would say that I am back mentally and emotionally, but physically it's still a long road. I couldn't really do a pull-up or a push-up when I got back to the gym a couple of days after getting back to Seattle, but it's all part of, I think, the realizing that what we build is always kind of impermanent when we're going for big goals in the mountains, and it's just part of the process. And you just got to have humility and being gentle on yourself when things change, including your body, and then just kind of get back to it for the next goal.
Staying on that thought, Andrew, when you spoke to us last time, you were describing how incredibly cold it was at the base of Mount Everest. You're now back in Seattle with record heat. What has that done to your body to have the complete opposite extreme?
Yeah, it's been hard. I mean, it's welcome in the sense that it's nice to thaw out a little bit, but your body changes. They talk about kind of altitude sickness, but you also get a weird shift when you come back to lower sea level. Things kind of feel just kind of constantly in flux. You've kind of been living in a state where your body is just kind of trying to survive. And so when you come back to sea level, there's just a lot of other things that kind of hit you. Stimulus, heat, just the sense of nutrition, your pH actually in your body, your kind of the chemical makeup of your body begins to alter slightly to deal with altitude. So sometimes your stomach can completely go off because your digestive system's altered to kind of work on digesting food at high altitude. So there's just all these other like reacclimation processes that go beyond simply returning to sea level.
Are there certain foods that you're eating intentionally right now as you're
I'd like to say I was more intentional in what I'm eating, but it's just been really whatever I can get. I mean, the thing is, like, you have major cravings coming off the mountain to begin with. But you do see this crazy, just like voracious appetite that comes in there because you're back, and all of a sudden your body just wants to consume, because as you go up, it's this weird trick your body plays on you as it kind of diverts energy to preserve the most important aspects of your organs and internal functioning systems. So despite the fact that when you climb the mountain, you should be eating more and consuming more energy, you shut down a lot of that desire to eat. You lose your appetite. And so when you come back, your body realizes all of a sudden, here we go, floodgates are open, let's get after it. But I'm trying to be more intentional about what I eat than I did a couple of years ago when I came off the mountain and I was coming off pneumonia, as it can kind of, your body also just doesn't know how to metabolize. You're not burning that same rate. So trying to keep it a much healthier intake of high proteins, and definitely trying to keep training right now coming out of the gate. So the body can kind of reawaken a little bit, but also have like proper fuel to do that.
Well, I want to go back a couple points. I've never done a pull-up in my life, so there's nothing to feel too bad about there. It was the big issue in the old presidential physical fitness test.
You've never done
gotten a pull-up. My center of gravity is too low, I think.
That must be
one question follow-up there. What was your first post-mountain meal that you really were able to enjoy and indulge? And then the second question is, I know when we talked to you last, we talked a little bit about the prep, but are you essentially trying to bulk up? I mean, like a bear going into hibernation, like pack as many calories and carbs in as you can, knowing your body's just going to start eating itself? I know I'm making this sound super pleasant for anyone thinking about trying to climb Mount Everest, but you know, how is that knowing what's coming? Are you trying to load up, or do you have to be careful about what you're eating and when you're eating because of the physical toll that you're going to be under?
Yeah. So, I mean, going to the second first, there's this balance. I mean, people have different takes on what they want, but in general, I think you're trying to create a most highly efficient metabolic system within your body as possible. So knowing that your body will at some point in time not be getting enough simple carbohydrates to fuel your system, you know that next up to kind of be consumed is going to be your muscles. Fat just takes more energy to break down. So the goal is you want a level of muscle and strength that will feed that moment. But the ideal goal too is you're trying to mitigate that through your training in advance of getting to the mountain. So yeah, you do a lot of kind of metabolic testing to determine like kind of at what rate your body transitions from burning carbs to start working on fat. And you're trying to increase your body's efficiency. So a lot of like one tactic is doing a lot of fasted training in advance. So you're basically just burning off those carbs and then going ideally straight to kind of working on burning fat. So you can save some of that muscle, because that muscle is super important to get you up the mountain still and get you down. If you eat it all on your first or second rotation, you're coming too skinny, which some people come in like super light, which doesn't work. I think there's this Goldilocks zone where you don't want to be too heavy because ounces equals pounds the higher up you get. And you don't want to carry a bunch of weight. Like really big, strong guys also have usually a hard time on the mountain because they have to haul all that wet mass up the mountain. They also have to feed all that muscle every time they do anything. So there's this in-between zone where you're not looking like the cover of Men's Health magazine, but you're also, you're not trying to like also be like kind of too heavy to get up because it's just super hard to pull yourself up over and over again doing that. And my girlfriend actually I got engaged this weekend, so like it's actually my fiance. Thank you. Yeah, I actually proposed to her on the summit of Everest. She didn't know it. I carried a flag up there and then finally showed her the flag on Saturday. So I just kept calling my girlfriend. I gotta change that to fiance, but she knew my craving is always fresh berries, because on the mountain you just don't get anything really that's truly fresh. So berries. Also taco time, kind of a Dick's milkshake, which is like a local burger joint up here. It's kind of a smorgasbord, some sushi. Like it wasn't one meal. It was like 5 meals in one the minute I got off the mountain. It didn't really stop for about 4 or 5 days like that, but back to a much more civilized, normal kind of training diet now.
Yes, that's like a Saturday night for me. So
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's that's one of the happiest things about coming back, is I just can have it all right then. So yeah.
A lot of people focus on the climb up the mountain, and I think what many folks don't know is the deadliest part of climbing Mount Everest is actually the descent, right? Coming down off the mountain is where most people die. Can you talk about the descent coming off Mount Everest? Because everyone likes to talk about how you climbed, and obviously it's an incredible story, but I am very, very curious about the descent and what that was like and how you went through that
Absolutely.
process.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think the numbers around like 85% of injuries and deaths occur on the descent. And this is because I think most people either get summit fever or view the summit as the culmination of the climb, when in fact it's simply the last place you can turn around. And so I think I was told that early on, and it kind of stuck with me because it just realized that you're looking for this summit moment, but like the moment where like you've truly completed the climb is when you get back home and you're safe and sound. So I think for us in general, you get up there and you see it a lot, even just on the summit day, the people that have burnt so much energy to get to the summit and then look like a newborn calf walking down, just kind of like doe-legged and falling over. And I mean, that's where the real danger comes. And you see that in just kind of people's injuries, and see people like just running out of oxygen because they just mismanaged their systems or they didn't feed themselves enough. And then, when you get done with the summit, you still have 2.5 days. You still have to go down from over 8,000 meters all the way down through the Khumbu ice falls. And so the climb is not over till you finish the mountain. And I think that's where like the humility comes in too, of realizing sometimes if it's not your day. And I always like applaud the people that kind of like look at themselves and realize like internally that this might not be the day, whether they're not feeling it, they're not up to it. I mean, the best athletes in the mountains, I think, have the humility to walk away from the summit, knowing that's not their day, that's not their year. And honestly, that's why you, I think, put together good teams and get people that are good guides for you, that have been up there and can read the systems around you, the weather conditions, because too much ego is what eventually gets you in trouble. Even if you've had success with those systems in the past, if they're a bad system, when they fail, they usually fail critically and cause kind of irreparable harm to the people that are kind of practicing them.
So outside of, I'm sure what was expected challenges or small hurdles, did everything go as planned for you? Were there any moments where you're like, holy shit, like we don't know what to do, or what? I don't want to say smooth, right? Because I'm assuming no climb of Everest is ever quote unquote smooth, but did it go as planned, or were there some?
I mean, no. So it was we had planned for about, I think, 6 days for our summit rotation from base camp to the summit, and we thought we had a weather window dialed in, and we're fortunate enough to have kind of contracted out some really good weather services based out of Belgium that we kind of use throughout the season, who kind of work to help us figure out, versus just opening our tent and looking out the door, what is the proper day to go to the summit. Because once you actually hit Camp 4, you honestly just have about 48 hours based upon how much oxygen you have there to get up and get down and get off and start descending. So if you don't time it right and hit Camp 4 right when the weather is opening up, then you essentially kind of like shoot yourself in the foot when it comes to summiting. So we actually were doing well to Camp 2, and then we just got getting hammered by wind and snow. I haven't actually been in a tent with those kind of winds sustained ever on any mountain, on any expedition before. So we moved to Camp 3, which is right on the Lhotse face, and kind of a place you don't want to stay longer than you have to. And we ended up we came in and had to unbury our tents that were completely socked in from 24 hours before from this massive storm that came in there. My tent with my tent mate at that time was literally at a 45-degree angle with a huge crevasse below us and barely hanging on. And I slept in this trench because my tent went over the side of our tent mound, and we just didn't have the time and energy to do that. So we ended up spending 2 days there to time ourselves better to moving to Camp 4. And the move from 3 to 4 turned out pretty well. But then coming into 4 was just, it was just savage. The winds were just ripping and tearing. Camp 4 is kind of a graveyard of expeditions past. There's just a lot of garbage, tents. Unfortunately, some bodies are there still, and you just kind of like come in there and you realize this is the real deal. And because of the system, we weren't able to actually get water or food that day or night coming in. So we came in dehydrated, weren't able to rehydrate. We actually ended up bringing in a Sherpa into our tent who had been lost that night, and basically kind of carry this whole system where we were up to about 3 a.m, stabilizing him. Came in, was throwing up in our tent. So we had to kind of like stabilize him with oxygen. So it's just one of those things where it's such a place where you're on that edge of life and death. And everyone's just kind of taking care of each other and trying to take care of themselves as best as possible. But we were we're definitely feeling it. I'm feeling kind of a lot of the angst going into our summit day into the night. The winds were still kicking up pretty hard, but the minute we hit that balcony, which is about 50%, we come out, I think that right out of Camp 4, the sun started coming up, and all of a sudden you could just feel things calming down. And it's just like this beautiful spiritual moment when all of a sudden you kind of like come out of the darkness of your headlamp and all of a sudden are bathed in the light of like a new day, and like things calm down and you could see the mountain ahead of you, and all of a sudden you were on Everest, and you were halfway there. And it just, at that point in time, things kind of like settled in, and our summit day was pretty beautiful after that. I mean, you can't really ask for a better one, or take your gloves off at the summit. We were up there for about half an hour, only left because I just wanted to get back down. I felt like I'd been up there long enough and didn't want to take more than it was willing to give. But yeah, and then the descent was a bit rougher. There was a cyclone that ended up hitting the mountain, so we had this beautiful window. We endured a lot, got the summit, but going down just became another whole thing. And then we were just basically hit by double cyclones that merged onto the mountain and camp. So snow, wind, no ability to really get out of base camp when we got down. So, but summit was beautiful. So, but it was about 12 days longer, or 12 days total, which is substantially longer than we had budgeted, I think, for everything.
The first time we had you on, you talked about the mini climbs that you had done before and a little bit of the things that you had learned as you went through that process. What did you learn about yourself on this climb?
Yeah, for me, it was, I had the goal going in to do the double 8,000 meter peaks. And it just kind of reaffirmed that lesson of like listening to your body and not taking more than the mountain's willing to give and more than your body's willing to give. There was like this sense of ego and sense of that I had like kind of like planted my flag and I wanted to achieve this specific goal, but you kind of get to this place where you start reassessing what is truly important and like why you're truly there, and just like being grateful for those, like for the opportunities to climb what you want to climb. And I think that's why I had such a strong Everest Summit days, because before I even went up, I had like decided that I wouldn't do the second one, just knowing the weather was going to shut down. And that gave me the ability to kind of channel all that energy that I might have like set aside for that mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and channel it into like the true goal that I was there for from the very start and the one that truly mattered to me most. I think that's the thing. Like sometimes we set goals for ourselves and we become so committed and grasp them so tightly that we actually lose both goals. We aren't able to achieve both things, versus kind of realizing what the true core of what we're trying to achieve is, and then committing ourselves and being willing to release and relinquish the things that don't truly matter. And yeah, for me, I think that like it got me up and down more safely because of that.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was reading something recently in a book, and it was talking about gritty people and how sometimes they can be their own worst enemy because they always grit their teeth and I'm gonna get through this and I'm gonna push through this, right? And I'm gonna find a way. It sounds similar to what you're talking about. It highlighted how important it is at times to grit your teeth and turn around. And for your case, it sounds like gritting your teeth and saying, I'm gonna climb this mountain, I'm gonna give it everything I have, and then I'm gonna go back and recalibrate.
Yeah, I can agree. I think there's definitely a balance between fight and flow. Like there's this thing when you kind of like you definitely want to fight for it and fight through it to get to where you want to go, but then you also need to flow with the things that are external to yourself and the conditions that are existing, and you have to go with that as well. Like there's a balance between like what you can do and what is presented to you that allows you to do those things. So, and the mountain's always a good teacher of that, and it will scold you substantially if you decide to try to like go against that.
You shared a little bit about, coming through and seeing the summit and knowing that at that point you were pretty confident you were going to make it. What is that moment like? I mean, I'm sure, of course, it's one of those things that you can't really explain or describe without being there, but when you get to the summit, like what do you see? What's around? Is it truly like just being on top of the world? I mean, what if you could try and paint a little bit of a picture about what it's like to just sit up there and take a look around? I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so it's you come over the Hillary Step, which is like this traditional thing, and actually I didn't know how far away the summit was, but it's another 10 to 15 minutes, and so but all of a sudden you're kind of on this summit ridge line, and you're kind of slowly moving upwards, and there's exposure there, but it's not too bad. All of a sudden you kind of feel like you can really start to let yourself be there, and like that last 24 hours on the mountain, we were going towards the summit, you start elevating yourself at such a substantial rate that all these things that had been hovering above you, all these mountains that are 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 meters are all of a sudden beginning to like be below you. And you can see the valley below that leads down through Camp 2, down through the Kumbuwais Falls. You can see where Camp 1 is. And you just look out to the horizon and you can begin to see the curvature of the earth, which is absolutely unreal. Just this slight dip on both ends of your periphery. And I mean, we were very fortunate because of what was there, but there's just this little patch near the summit of prayer flags and idols that people have carried up there. And we waited actually at the bottom of the hill step for about an hour, which is just showing how nice the weather was for us, to let kind of the crowds disappear before we went up. So there's only about maybe 10 of us there at the moment. So it wasn't crowded. And it was just, I mean, for me, I'm a crier usually on summits, and it was no different this time. There's a lot of emotion, I think, especially for me, having tried Everest before, having prepared for it last year with COVID and not having, and then finally having come to realize, having 7 summits come to fruition in that moment. It was just, it's extremely emotional. You also realize how much people in your life have given to you to be there. I think this is no different than in the fraternity or any kind of organization that you're part of, or family or community. You realize that like your strength is also based upon the strength of that community. And so you just, I mean, it gives me chills thinking about it now, because I just remember the feeling of how much gratitude I had for everyone who had been in my life, who had helped me, who had taught me, who had loved me, and who really had taken all those steps with me to that point. So it's an emotional place, and you see people realizing dreams that they'd held their whole lifetime. We had this great inspirational man named Art Muir, who's from Chicago, who's 75 years old, who had tried in 2018, I think, and who hadn't made it, came back this year, became the oldest American ever to summit Everest. Just like people like that you're sharing the summit with on your team, and you see the dreams reflected back in your own eyes, and you see your own dream in them as well. This kind of shared, tethered, universal dream that's shared by all the people to kind of seek any kind of summit. And it's a special place. But like anything, you're there for a very short time, and you just try to like take a seed and plant in your heart and let that thing take root for the rest of your life.
We live in a society of immediate gratification where people can't wait 3 minutes for their Starbucks. So I cannot imagine, what was it like having to wait for an hour there when you're 10 to 15 minutes away? Because anticipation, right? You've gone through all of these weather events and all the sacrifices and everything, and then to sit there for an hour, I would love for you to paint that, because I cannot imagine how much patience that would.
Yeah, it's a weird balance. I mean, I think if it had been any other day, I would have been extremely nervous about spending any more time, but we had been so efficient in ourselves of getting to that point. But I've talked to this about a few people. The fact that like when you get higher and you have to slow down and there are some lines, for me, I loved it because it actually slowed me down to the point where I could look around and appreciate where I was, knowing full well that I'll probably never stand in those steps again. So like, despite even being there, like I was just so grateful and appreciative to be able to like just have those moments, and just try to soak it in as much as possible. Like put my hand on the rock next to me and just kind of like just try to feel that rock and know that like I'm touching like the top of the world right now, like in the sense of those ridge lines, and like just try to soak up as much as possible, because you just never know when you're going to get back there. And having taken so long to get there to begin with, it was almost like I didn't want to rush it. I was okay slowing down. Like I wasn't trying to get anywhere else too quickly. Like I just wanted to cherish it all, because I'll climb other mountains, but I'll never be on that one in that moment, in that day, like I was.
Are you burning energy in conversation at that point, an hour, sitting there for an hour, or is everyone just essentially looking around and taking it in?
So like there's only about maybe 5 or 6 of us who decided that we were going to wait on this little ledge area that just had about just enough room for someone to pass us, because the rope's only one rope there, so you got to clip people around you. But it was the right decision, because partially what happens around the Hillary step when people start getting kind of that cluster is that people start trying to be impatient, and they unclip the rope and start trying to go up around people and stuff like that. That's when you're starting to like deal with a lot of risk and falling off, and people can get hurt. So for us, we're like, we weighed ourselves. We kept checking in with one another, like how we were doing. Like we were all warm. We all had oxygen. We kind of just clipped ourselves into some older ropes that were there, just kind of like allowed the rope that people were using to kind of go to be more free. And then as people came by, especially the people that were maybe had burned a little too much going up to the summit, we helped them by along, helped keep them clip in. But we just kind of kept in communication with one another, our little group there that we decided to stop and just make sure that everyone was doing okay. If we had started getting too cold or something happened, we would have started to move up the mountain. We would have pushed that last little bit, but I think we just realized that we were in a good position. We were secure. And so we could bide our time there and wait for it to be completely, because once it's safe and clear, it's a pretty direct and simple route up. Just you kind of minimize your risk by being patient.
One of the things you mentioned were the crowds, and one of the things that's interesting to me, you're right, reading articles or seeing pictures, is that Everest has almost, I hate to call this, but it's almost become a tourist destination to some people where, if you have enough money and you have the means, you can at least try and get up there. For someone like yourself who takes it so seriously, who preps as hard as you do, how do you, I'd imagine it's not worth wasting the emotional energy to say, screw that guy, he didn't put in the time that I did. But how do you separate yourself mentally from that and just kind of let that go when there are people up there who have not worked as hard, fought as hard, gone through the things that you've gone through, and are just kind of there because I think it might be something cool to do once or twice?
Yeah, it definitely dilutes down, I think, how special Everest is, not only to those that go back every year and guide on it, but to the Nepalese people and the Tibetan people that have a reverence for this mountain. Beyond it just being the tallest mountain, it is something that is spiritually important to them. And I think that's often lost when people have that relationship that we talked about last time of conquering versus communion with this mountain and connection with the community of people they're with. And I think I just feel bad for them because I think they're missing a really deeper level of meaning that can be extracted from climbing big mountains or climbing any mountain. But everyone climbs for different reasons and they're drawn to it. So at the end of the day, I try to have empathy for why they're doing it. And I do know that people climb sometimes it's the ego that drives for some people, but you do, I think, find things that connect you all in some way. There's something that mountain climbing for some reason draws them there. And so I hope there's some seed of universal respect for the mountain that they have that's either wasn't there when they got there or is definitely gained from the climb itself. And the mountain generally is a good filter of those that come in with too much ego and not enough respect for the mountain. There are tons of people that get up there that are pulled up or pulled off, that you're like, it's a shame because they're going to go back there and they're going to probably Hollywoodize their story and create a different narrative. But again, they have to live with that truth and live with the truth that they know themselves to be their own experience. And again, like you said, it's end of the day, it's not worth kind of going and trying to correct people or kind of filter them out of that experience. It should be your own personal thing at the end of the day, and you have to live with your stories.
How much time did you spend, Andrew, when you got all the way down and off the mountain? Did you spend time in the country? What was that process between getting to the base of the mountain and then getting on an airplane?
Yeah, I mean, so I actually sprained my ankle on the descent from the summit. So I was kind of beginning to hobble down from about Camp 4 all the way to base camp. So by the time I got through the Khumbu Ice Falls, I was kind of couldn't put weight on my left foot or my left ankle at all. So I actually was going to I was trying to get medically evacuated out, but we actually, it was the Cyclone Yas hit the mountain right on the 25th as we came. And so the ability to both to trek out and to fly out were kind of negated for all people at that time. Partially because since there's not all the trekkers this year, a lot of the lodges that we would normally stay at on the trek out have closed down early for the season. So the ability to actually trek out and stay at places that you normally would to kind of break up the 26 miles down to Namche before you would head down to Lukla wasn't just an option for the first few days. And I couldn't really walk out anyways. So I was just waiting for a helicopter weather window and got fortunate to get out. But the COVID cases in Nepal just in the last few weeks, so we were there on the mountain, just went horribly through the roof. So the country itself actually shut down almost all of May and into June, all inbound and outbound flights. So whether you're even trying to get home, you couldn't fly out on your flight. So all our flights were canceled anyways. So even though we eventually took about 2 helicopter days to get out down to Kathmandu, but once we were there, the whole city was shut down with military and checkpoints, and you couldn't be out of your hotel. So we were stuck in our hotel with no flights. All our flights that were supposed to go did get canceled, and then kind of a strange charter system was set up by the Nepalese government where we got to pay extra to fly out to cities that generally weren't even the cities we were trying to fly to, but would actually get us out of the country at least. A bit of an Argo situation. And then once back, I mean, I was only a few days late, but the logistics to actually get out were not this kind of smooth transition. It was like hurdle after hurdle, whether it was weather-wise or COVID or political. So yeah, not a quick ride home.
Well, I just my last question for you, and I don't know, I'm guessing based on conversations that we've had previously, it is on your mind. I don't know about how deeply, but what's next for you, right? You hit this goal, you accomplished what you set out to accomplish with Everest. I'm guessing you're not ready to sit back and hang up the climbing boots, so to speak, but what's next on the docket for you?
Yeah, so the thing that's most confirmed, and it was kind of a redundancy in case this year, is I'm heading to hopefully the North Pole in April of 2022, so next year, and that's kind of traversing by ski and sled, 89th degree to the North Pole itself, and I'm able to do that. That'll complete the Explorers Grand Slam for me, which will be, I think there's less than 60 people that have ever done that. So that's always been another goal after the 7 summits was Explorers Grand Slam. I'm working right now to hopefully maybe be back in the Alps this summer for some training climbing, maybe do Mont Blanc again. And then I'm working on coordinating some climbs down in the Atacama Plateau in Chile, and hopefully going after a couple world records for a hybrid of kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding, and mountaineering with these high bodies of water they have, kind of the highest bodies of water in the world. So hopefully there'll be a couple fun expeditions for 2022, and then of course I have to get married at some point next year as well.
Don't forget about that.
Just
prioritize that as well.
World records, the North Pole, and a wedding. I mean, there's really much on your dock.
Could you combine some of those plans and just get married up in the North Pole? Is that a possibility?
If my fiance liked the cold, I would say so, but I think I'd have to figure out some kind of beachy situation in the North Pole, which I'm not sure will work out so well. But
we get a lot of reasons why people can't volunteer for the fraternity, but this does seem like a series of very valid reasons why you take time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being more around to be able to get back and volunteer on a more regular basis as well, for sure. But yeah, the last handful of years have been kind of been hard to do much of anything else besides repack bags and do laundry. So
we'll give you a pass.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Always here for you guys, though.
See if you can find some Wi-Fi up there in the North Pole. We'll try and do the first ever Teak Nation podcast interview up on the top of
on the ice. Absolutely. Yeah, we can totally do that from Svalbard and beyond. So yeah.
Don, did you have anything else?
I don't. I'm incredibly grateful, Andrew, for you making time again. I know our listeners are really going to appreciate this. And hearing your stories and the grace in which you share it and the humility and the lessons, it's inspiring for us. I know it's inspiring for our listeners. And as Al said, I'm really excited about your next adventures and hearing about that, because some of us are living, I know I speak for myself, living vicariously through you. There's many of us that think, right, we have it tough when we're doing some personal training or some other goals we're tackling, but it's inspiring to see all the things you're doing.
Yeah, well, I'm so grateful for all you guys do and for the fraternity and for the brotherhoods you continue to help foster. So thank you for everything and for this opportunity to be here. So it's always an honor.
Absolutely. Thank you, Andrew. We can't thank you enough. We'll do it again soon.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
And we want to thank Andrew one last time for being with us, for making time for us. I'm sure there are a lot of people tugging on him, asking him what it was like to climb the world's tallest mountain. So taking 35 minutes of his time was a privilege. Obviously, congratulations to him as well on the engagement. and an overall tough interview for the Flat Earth Society. So tough scene there. Maybe you can reach out to Andrew for more info if you're curious on the curvature of the Earth. With that, we're going to wrap this sucker up. That is all for the Teak Nation podcast this week. We will be back with you next week, of course. Until then, tell a friend about this program. Make sure that you know when the next episode of the Teak Nation podcast drops. Like, subscribe, download, record, listen again, work it into your daily schedule, your weekly schedule. We want to hear more from you. We want to talk to more of you. And frankly, we need you. We need you to keep listening and need you to get more people on board. So with all that being said, it has been an honor to talk to you here today, and we'll catch you again soon. Goodbye.